Good morning, gardeners. I'm Anna. I'm in the garden at Unity Church-Unitarian, and I welcome you into our garden lesson today. First, we light the chalice, and you can say the words with me. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, the light of truth and the warmth of love. And if you'll join with me, we'll sing the song. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. And if you have this at home, you can join me for joys and sorrows. I will start with some blue stones. As I was driving here today, I saw a lot of boarded up storefronts, and it just reminds me of all the turbulence of these times. It's a challenge. Our hearts go out to everyone that's out there protesting and working for justice. And yet, this garden is a safe place. This garden is a peaceful place. And for me, it is a place of joy. And for that, I put in a yellow stone. So I'll give you a moment to do the same at home. Thank you for that. There's another song I would like to sing. It's one that I think you know, Spirit of Life. In these crazy times, I think we need songs of hope, and this song does that for me. So if you know this song, and maybe we can pop the words up on the screen, you can join with me. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice, roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Hilster, who is reading a very special story for today.
This morning's story is Two Old Potatoes and Me. And it's by an author, John Coy, and pictures by Carolyn Fisher. Two Old Potatoes and Me. Last spring at my dad's house, I found two old potatoes in the back of the cupboard. They were so old, sprouts were growing from their eyes. Gross! I tossed them into the trash. Oh, wait, Dad said. I think we can grow new potatoes with those. I'll call your grandpa. He'll know. Well, after talking to Grandpa, Dad and I took the potatoes to the sunniest spot in the garden. We dug. We picked out rocks. We raked the soil smooth. They got the garden ready. Dad carefully cut the potatoes into 9 pieces with his jackknife. I made sure each piece had at least 1 yellow sprout. Dad dug 9 small holes. I put a piece of potato with the eye facing up in each hole. Then I covered them with dirt to make little hills. Dad got the hose and I watered it gently. In May, green plants poked up like caterpillars unfolding. We got down on our knees and picked weeds. We shoveled compost onto each hill. Won't that smother the plants? Nope, they'll grow through it. Are we really going to get new potatoes from old potatoes? I think so, Dad said. In June, the plants grew bigger. Violet flowers blossomed, and we added more compost. When we watered, I accidentally sprayed Dad with the hose. He laughed and sprayed me back. In July, when the plants were as tall as my waist, we picked potato beetles off the leaves. I dropped them into a pail of soapy water. We have to do this, Dad said. Otherwise the bugs will eat the leaves and the potatoes won't grow. In August, some of the plants turned brown and withered. Are they dead? No, said Dad. The potatoes are growing underground. Are you sure? I hope so. That's what your grandpa said. We weeded, we watered, we waited. Now, on a cool September day, Dad and I sit on the bench in front of the garden. How's your bedroom at your mom's house coming? Dad asks. Good. Mom and I painted it periwinkle. Periwinkle? I like that color. I bet it looks good. You can see it on Friday when you pick me up. Okay, Dad says. It will be Periwinkle Friday. We get up and walk to the garden. What's your favorite way to eat potatoes? Dad asks. Mashed, with lots of butter and a sprinkling of nutmeg for good luck. That's my favorite way too. Let's see what's under these hills. Dad gets the garden fork from the shed and I carry the big bucket. Dad digs at the first hill. Nothing but dirt. Well, he digs again. More dirt. After all that work, I say. Dad hands me the fork. You try. I dig deep. I lift the fork and see 7 golden shapes. Potatoes! I shout. Look at those spuds, Dad says. I bend down, pick up a potato, rub the dirt off its skin, and set it in a bucket. One potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, 5 potato, 6 potato, 7 potato more. Each hill has lots of potatoes. Some are small and some are big. Some have funny faces. "51 potato, 52 potato, 53 potato, 54, 55 potato, 56 potato, 57 potato more." I count 67 and our bucket is overflowing. All this from 2 old potatoes. Yes, Dad rubs my head. Ready to dig into the potatoes you grew? Yeah, I'm hungry. And John Coy has even included a recipe for mashed potatoes, which taste absolutely the best from potatoes you grow in your very own garden. And that's the end of 2 old potatoes and me. And now, let's see what the garden holds for us.
Thank you, Dan. That was wonderful. Potatoes are pretty amazing, and we're going to be talking a lot about potatoes. But I want us to think about that song, Spirit of Life. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means, and I have a confession to make. When I sing that song, I often get choked up in the middle of it. Now, why would a song that you love make you get sad? And I think it's because the words of the song capture our hopes and our longing for connection with other people, with nature, and our hope for making this world a better place. I think that's what Carolyn McDade had in mind when she wrote that song. And lately I've been thinking a lot about what that song means, and thinking a lot about other living things, and especially plants. Do you suppose the Spirit of Life comes to plants too? I don't know. Plants don't do very much when we look at them. Most people probably don't pay much attention to them because they don't move. They're not like a dog. They don't have ears that perk up and a tail that wags when it greets us. So they're pretty subtle. And yet plants can do some amazing things. I have this wonderful potato here. I'd love to eat potatoes. If you look at it closely, it's got little dimples, and if you look at a potato in your cupboard, it'll probably have the same thing, especially if it's been sitting there a while. And every one of these dimples has a tiny little sprout there. So if you leave this in your cupboard, just like in the story of the 2 old potatoes and me, it'll start to sprout. There's energy in here, and in the dark, dry cupboard, there is such a strong urge to grow. It's like the Spirit of Life is in this potato, I think. And last week, we took some old potatoes from my cupboard and we planted them in the potato bed right over there. And they had sprouts that, I kid you not, were this big. And we put them in the ground and we buried them. And in a couple of weeks, we should see plants growing there. So I think that's amazing. that you can grow a new plant from a piece of an old plant. And you might ask why this happens. Plants, when a seed starts to grow, that seed has some cells in it that will grow down and make a root, and some cells that grow up and make a shoot and make leaves and eventually flowers. But there's always some tissue in there that can still change and turn into something else. And when a plant gets grown and is mature, that tissue, which we call meristematic tissue, is what can turn into new roots or new leaves or a new shoot. Whatever the plant needs, it can do that. So if you think about that, those meristematic cells can grow a whole new plant. Is that the spirit of life? I don't know. I don't know. Does this work with other plants? Let's move over to the table and we'll find out. Okay. So in my kitchen, I have some food to eat, and assuming I can open my bag, I've got some lettuce. It's kind of old lettuce, it's a little bit sad. There's a carrot, there's an onion, there's a beet. And when I go to eat these things, there's often parts of the plant that we trim away. So for instance, the carrot, the part we eat is here. What about this end? This is where the meristematic tissue is. If I cut this off and I leave a little bit of the stem for energy, I can go ahead and eat this, but this part, I can put that in a dish of water. And if you keep it moist and you watch it over a week, it takes a while, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it might grow. The same thing is true for a beet. You cut off the top, eat the rest of it, and this top part can sprout out. And if you do that, you've essentially got a kitchen garden in your kitchen. And those beet shoots that grow from that are something that you can eat in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, however long it takes. An onion, you have to do the opposite. The part we cut off is down here, and you can see little stubs where the roots were. But if you cut it, and this is something you'll want to have your parent do, like this, go ahead and cook with the top part, put the bottom part in the water. And then you've got a chance for green onion sprouts to come up that you can cook later. So what happens with time? These are some that I set up, gosh, it's been about 3 weeks now. First, here's the onion, and as I lift it up, if I hold that and I put something behind it, does that show up, Michelle? If we were in the shadow, it would work. So those are new roots that have grown, and if I flip it around, here's the center, because new leaves will grow because there's meristematic tissue down in there. Carrots, they start off like this, and there's tiny little sprouts, and then I'm going to show you one that's a little older. This one's been in my kitchen sprouting for a while. And here is how big it is today. It is so cool. I have to tell you, this was one of the things I did as a kid, and it's part of what got me hooked on plants. So even though this is food and we eat it and we don't think about it, it's got the ability to grow, and it's just kind of amazing. There are some directions for doing this on the website, on the parent resources, some instructions, and there's even a really cool activity. You can take the beets and you can make a beet tattoo. I'm not going to show you right now, but the instructions are on the web page. So those are ideas of things to do. And I have one more thing to show you. If you've got herbs in your garden, if you have potted plants in your garden, there's something else. This is a begonia, and it was part of a potted plant, and it got bumped and the branch fell off, just like that one that just fell, because they're kind of brittle. But one thing that you'll want to notice, and we'll get a close-up of this, is that on the stem, where the leaves are, there's a little bump that's called a node. And inside of that node is meristematic tissue. And if you put this in water, what starts to grow? Roots. And if you put this in a glass jar, you can watch those roots grow, and then once they get started, you can put it in a pot and cover it with soil and keep it moist, and you've got a whole new plant. So I want you to think about this. I'm hoping you'll do some of these experiments at home. Not everything will grow. I had several potatoes that rotted. The beet that I tried to grow rotted, but some of them will grow. And see what happens. Cook with the rest, make some beet tattoos, do fun things like that. But be thinking about plants and how they grow and that spirit of life. I came over to the tree because I want to share another story with you. And this happened many, many years ago in New Jersey, where there was a forest of pine trees. And in one corner of the forest, the trees were dying. Turned out a bunch of bark beetles had come, and they burrow under the bark and they chew the inner bark, and then the tree basically starves to death. But the interesting thing was that even though the trees in this corner died, over here the trees were healthy. And the bark beetles didn't bother them. And when scientists looked at it, they realized that the trees had produced a chemical that kept the bark beetles from damaging the trees, kept the bark beetles away. The really weird thing was that that chemical hadn't been in those trees before the first trees were infected. And then the question was, how do they know they needed to do it? If you're thinking that maybe the first trees sent a message to the rest of the forest that bark beetles were coming and, beware, you're right. It's exactly what happened. But it took a while to figure out exactly what the mechanism was. And as people study plants, they start thinking things, and gardeners have been wondering this for a long time. Do plants have emotions? Do they communicate? Do they recognize their young? Take care of their young? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? And it does sound crazy, but if you ask the right questions, sometimes you get some really interesting answers, and some of those answers come from trees and trees in the forest, because we now know that underground those roots spread out, and where the roots of one tree come next to the roots of the adjacent tree, there are fungi that help transmit the chemicals that are the communication between the one tree and the next tree. So trees do communicate to each other. They found, foresters have long been puzzled by the fact that when they cut down one tree, that stump can live for years and years and years. And what they've since found out is that the trees around the stump, around their former companion, continue to use nutrients of their own to keep that stump alive. And then when it comes to the children of the tree, when a tree like this one drops its seeds, in the deep forest there's not much light, and sometimes it's really hard for those seeds and those tree seedlings to get going. But the mother tree will keep her babies fed, and then eventually, and it might take 20 years or more, but eventually a big tree will die and there'll be light on the forest floor, and at that point those baby trees can start to grow. So it's amazing, but trees recognize their young and they feed them. So if plants can grow from a little piece of meristematic tissue, if plants communicate through their roots, if plants recognize each other, share food, feed their babies, what do you think? Do trees have a spirit of life? Spirit of life, come unto me, rise in my heart, bring all the stirrings of compassion, roots, hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come unto me. What do you think? Think on that for the next week. And I will now extinguish the flame.